When I think of role models, I think of comic book superheroes. Superman, Captain America, Wonder Woman, and the list goes on. I love these heroes because it didn't matter what race or gender they were. They all fought for humanity. The only thing that I saw as a major flaw about these heroes was their fictional nature. There was no man who could leap tall buildings in a single bound, defeat an army with his strength and heart, or stop a villain with their golden lasso of truth. These fictional characters left me in awe, but with no real hope. Then it hit me. We love superheroes because we align ourselves with their values. Fortunately, we do have a superhero in this world. They just don't wear capes, and their powers are different. We have one standing here today, or sitting. I don't want to disappoint. U.S. Attorney Ms. Carmen M. Ortiz is not only the first woman, but also the first Latina to be the United States Attorney of Massachusetts. To quote her biography, Ms. Ortiz supervises the prosecution of all federal government crimes and the litigation of all civil matters in which the federal government has interest. She also worked with people like Attorney General Eric Holder. When I read Ms. Ortiz's biography, I felt like I was reading a comic book made for the real world. A real person who has the superhero characteristic of wanting to fight for the sake and betterment of humanity. Now please help me in welcoming Yolanda Villanueva to share more about this superhero with no cape. Thank you. Thank you, Tori.
Sometimes I undermine myself. I think I'm not capable of doing what seems impossible. Many of you may feel the same way, but I'm glad to meet and learn from a woman who makes it evident that anyone is capable of greatness. To elaborate on her super capacity, imagine a Justice League full of 200 attorneys. Each of them have their individual superpowers and responsibilities. Now scatter them across 3 different cities: Boston, Worcester, and Springfield. Like Professor X from X-Men, Carmen Ortiz's mission is to oversee and enable them to fulfill their own mission. She'll speak more about the complexities of what that entails. On top of that, this week she made the front page of the Boston Globe. As a prosecutor, she's in charge of defeating a new villain, Whitey Bulger. This man killed 19 people.
Allegedly.
19 people. He has avoided justice for 19 years. That's 19 years. Time is irreplaceable for superheroes. But Carmen Ortiz wants to be here and share her wisdom with you. So stand up and help me to welcome Carmen M. Ortiz.
What a warm welcome. You make me feel like I can leap over a tall building in one single bound. But I think I'm just going to keep my feet to the ground for the next hour or so and share with you a little bit about myself. I think I see a couple of litigators in the making with that presentation and introduction that two lovely ladies had for me. Anyway, let me just start off by saying that it's a great privilege and an honor for me to be here. I think some time ago when I met Dario, he told me about this program, and he had invited me to speak to you. Sometime in the summer, wasn't sure, really wanted to work around my schedule. But when I heard about the nature of the program, the nature of the students, and its goals in providing you with encouragement and motivation and support to being the future leaders of this great country, I mean, how could I say no to that? How could I say no to that? And I am inspired by the number of you that are in this room. Because when I started out, and I do see myself in many of you who are sitting here quite many years ago, I didn't have that many, there weren't that many Latinos in college, in law school. certainly not Latina women, for certain. So I'm very inspired by the fact that there's so many of you here in this leadership course at Harvard. That's just wonderful. And it indicates to me that you are more than well on your way to being there, because I know that most of you are college students, so you've overcome the hardships of elementary school, the dangers that some of your neighborhoods may have posed, the lack of support that some of you may have endured in your struggle to get here. And then you survived high school, and that's not an easy time in life for many, and at times it's much more difficult for some than others. So I'm impressed because you're in college now and you're on your way, and you know this is important, and you're working hard to be here and striving for your future. So what I hope to do is to inspire you a little bit more, to make you realize that whatever you set your mind to, if you dream big and you work hard, you are very, very likely to achieve your goals. And that despite life's hardships along the way and life's challenges, that you still can overcome them and do what it is that your heart desires for you to do. I feel that's how it's happened in my life. And I'm at a certain point when I look back and I can say that I've been very, very blessed with a wonderful professional career. And I've also had a great personal life as well, although it's had its share of challenges, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But I am here to hopefully motivate you and realize, and help you realize that regardless of where you come from, regardless of the challenges that you need to deal with and endure, that if you set your mind to achieving your dreams, you can. And not just because I say so, but because I think I'm a living example of that. So what I want to do is, I want to talk to you a little bit about, about my office and what I do as a federal prosecutor. So I'm going to talk to you about the U.S. Attorney's Office, the kind of work that we do there, and I'm going to breeze through it some more because I think you may want to hear more about my own personal background, and then about these principles and what I think have helped me to get to where I am, where I was so many years ago. And throughout, I want to leave time, obviously, for questions. So, and even throughout, you don't need to wait till the end. If there's something that strikes you and you have a question, don't be afraid to raise your hand and let me know. But I want to tell you a little bit about my role as the U.S. Attorney in the U.S. Attorney's Office. And I have to tell you, I have never had a job that I've worked so hard at. I feel like it's 24/7 most of the time, so it's a good thing that I'm an empty nester. That means my youngest is in college now, so I can dedicate myself 24/7 to my job. My husband doesn't like that, but I can, and that I've enjoyed so much. It doesn't seem like work because I'm so challenged, I'm so interested, and I feel that I'm making a real impact on the community and the people that I work with, and so it's a great privilege for me to be in this position. But oh, here we go. I had it upside down. I'm not great with the clicker here. Okay, here we go. Well, what is the U.S. Attorney's Office? I'm going to go very quickly. We are part of the executive branch. I was appointed by the president after a very strenuous selection process here in Massachusetts. The senior senator, which at the time was Senator Edward Kennedy, recommended me to the president. And after a due diligence, meaning a thorough background check through the Department of Justice and the White House, the president submitted my name to the Senate Judiciary Committee. They voted it me unanimously to pass my name on to the Senate floor, and the Senate then voted me in to be United States Attorney. And we're part of the executive as compared to obviously the court system and the legislature. We are part of the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice is part of the President's cabinet. Oh, I don't have to walk back and forth. It's got the little thing here if I want to do that, but I'm not going to do that. We'll keep moving along quickly. But I just want to give you a sense of the Department of Justice. And the Department of Justice is headed by the United States Attorney General, Eric Holder, who happens to be And the mission of the department is basically to enforce the law and defend the interests of the United States, part of the federal branch. There are 93 United States Attorney's offices, of which Massachusetts is one. And the Attorney General is a good friend of mine. I worked for him when I was a law student in the public integrity section, and he was a young lawyer there, and I won't tell you how many years ago that was. Our office, our primary role, our main mission here is to keep the people of Massachusetts safe. The Department of Justice is to keep the people of the United States safe. And we do that through our federal criminal prosecutions. We investigate and prosecute federal crimes. We also bring civil actions on behalf of the United States. We sue on behalf of the United States government on issues of discrimination in either housing or lending or employment, violations of American with Disabilities Act. So just to give you a little bit, and we defend the US government. So when federal agencies are sued, here in Massachusetts, we defend those agencies. If it's the FBI, the Postal, United States Postal Department, we defend them. My office is divided into three main divisions. There's the criminal division. We do a lot of work. Our office, I'm sorry, was I blocking you? We do a lot of, organizationally, we do a tremendous amount of different kinds of crimes. We have a variety of different units. From the economic crimes unit, as you can see from the chart, I'm not going to read this to take up time. And this is where our criminal work takes place. We have a civil division that does defensive litigation. That is when we represent the government in lawsuits. Affirmative civil enforcement, that's when we sue on behalf of the government. But we also do asset forfeiture. In many cases, we're allowed by statute to seize certain assets of either an individual or a company that has been engaged as the proceeds of illegal activity and for other bases as well. And then our administrative division. So we have a finance, procurement. Think of the U.S. Attorney's Office as a big, major law firm with a number of different divisions in it. But there are different departments, there are different types of roles in the U.S. Attorney's Office. Sometimes people think, oh, it's lawyers. But it's not just lawyers. We, as you can see, we have, in addition to the lawyers that work in our office, there are paralegals, legal assistants. We have a press officer, computer specialist, victim witness advocate who deal with victims involved in our crimes, human resource specialist, budget specialist as well. So it's an office that's composed of many different individuals who make the office operate. So any questions on that so far? I can't imagine that you would. Okay. What's our priority? Our priorities stem from the Department of Justice's priorities. The number one priority, make no mistake about it, is national security. Utilizing our resources to fight terrorism and to make sure that our country is secure. Other priorities that I have in the office stem from the department's priorities as well, but also are a focus of ours. And it depends on which district you are. I'm very fortunate. Massachusetts, I'm the only U.S. attorney. New York, Florida, big states, Texas have 4 U.S. attorneys. And so depending upon what are the real needs of the community, the state that you oversee, you to prioritize. So other priorities within here in Massachusetts that I've chosen to make important in the office is civil rights, public corruption, violent crime, financial fraud cases, and healthcare fraud is huge. But the big first one that I'll talk about is terrorism, national security. Now, everybody thinks that since September 11th, that's when the real focus, that's like the first terrorist act that people think about in many ways. And in many ways, it was of such an impact that it did change the way in which we do business. For example, post 9/11, immediately after, it seemed like the only kind of work that the FBI did was focus on terrorism cases, national security matters. And that's where a lot of the federal agency resources went. But there have been other prior cases that people seem to forget about. This is a case, I don't know how many of you remember, the Oklahoma City bombing. Okay, this was a domestic terrorism case. Sometimes people think of terrorism, they think of the Middle East. They think of, foreign countries. But, here, this was a terrorist act that occurred in 1995 in which Timothy McVeigh blew up a federal building because he hated the government, basically. He was tried, and it was one of the first federal executions that took place in Oklahoma, I think in over 38 years, and he was killed by lethal injection. He was caught because after he set up a truck with a bomb that exploded right outside the courthouse, he got into a vehicle and drove it away that didn't have license plates. So he was stopped for driving a vehicle with no license plate within 90 minutes of this explosion. And when he was stopped by the state police in Oklahoma, they saw other items that made them suspicious in the vehicle that he was driving. And certain observations led to another. They discovered evidence linking him to the explosion. And there you go. It was a pretty quick resolution. He had a partner in that crime, Timothy Nichols, who also helped him, and he's doing life in jail. But it was McVeigh who drove the truck up there and who paid for this crime with his life. Does anybody know about this individual? This was a domestic terrorist. This was an individual who grew up here in the United States, was born here, Theodore Kaczynski. He was an individual who was an intellectual child prodigy, a Harvard graduate with a PhD from the University of Michigan. He, after teaching, I don't know, maybe that's what put him over the edge. I'm kidding.
Allegedly.
He only taught me. He felt that the country was really being overcome by technology and all this advancement. So he moved into the woods and he sent, and he lived in a cabin. He sent all these bombs throughout the country. He injured about 23. He killed 3 people. He then sent a letter to the New York Times, like his manifesto. And in the manifesto, he explained why he would continue with these bombings and threatening people and causing harm and causing death. His brother recognized the handwriting on this manifesto, turned him in, and he was arrested, and he's doing life in jail now. This was a case my office handled many years ago, I think a year after the 9/11, and this was Richard Reed. He put a bomb in his shoe and tried to explode it on a flight that he took from Paris here. It was headed to Miami, I believe, but because he tried to detonate it, and the passengers basically stopped him. And I think because he was sweating and something went wrong with the bomb, it did not go off on the plane. So the plane landed at Logan Airport, and our office prosecuted him, and he's doing life in prison. And it is because of this case that now everybody has to take their shoes off when you go through the screen at the airport. This is another case in our terrorism, from our terrorism unit and our terrorism work. And this had to do, a company and the 2 individuals that ran that company were prosecuted for illegally exporting sensitive technology to China. So we do a lot of common proliferation work at the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'm doing real short synopsis because I want to get through this part of it. Anti-Terrorism Advisory Council. These are different mechanisms, Joint Terrorism Task Force, in which we collaborate with state, local, federal agencies, law enforcement agencies. We also work closely with universities, healthcare facilities, private industry, non-governmental organizations, all working together, all sharing information, because all of these different individuals, different entities, organizations, they're like our eyes and ears. You know, the FBI can't be everywhere, and the other federal law enforcement agencies can't be everywhere. So they're our eyes and ears out there, and so we work closely with them. We do a lot of community outreach to share information with the community in our fights to protect national security. Civil rights, I was the first to initiate the Civil Rights Enforcement Team. I created this group within my office that focuses on civil rights enforcement, and it's made up of U.S. attorneys from both our criminal and our civil division. We do both criminal and civil rights enforcement. Now this, I'm going to spend maybe 2 minutes on this part. Part of our civil rights work is also educating people and dealing with people's misconceptions. And we've dealt a lot, too, with we work closely. We have this organization called Bridges where we reach out and we work closely with the Muslim, Arab, and Sikh community in terms of listening to their concerns, discussing what the issues are. Sometimes people have certain perceptions of who a terrorist is and who is not a terrorist. Who do you think is not a terrorist in this diagram? Any volunteers? Yes, Mr. Patiño?
Number 6.
Number 6? Why do you think number 6 is not a terrorist?
It looks like it is.
Huh?
It looks like
An innocent young woman?
Okay, I'm sure there's a terrorist in there.
Number 6 is Rania Ibrahim, age 15. She was captured in Iraq in 2008 at a checkpoint wearing a suicide vest containing about 33 pounds of explosives.
Wow.
Who else? Yes, sir?
I guess number 8, like in the last
Number
line,
8?
on the center.
Why is he not a terrorist? Why
No,
did-
no, he's a terrorist.
Oh, you think he is a terrorist? He is a Do you know who that is?
No,
You don't know who that is?
no.
That's John Salvi. He killed 2 people outside.
Oh.
Yes. Who said that? Oh, yes, okay, so, anti-abortionists, yes.
I have a question. Are they all terrorists?
No, they're not all terrorists.
Okay.
One is not a terrorist.
I know who it
Who's
is.
the one? We'll do one more, because there's so much to cover, and I only have 1 hour.
Number 5, because he looks really happy.
Number 5 is not a terrorist, that's right, he's not a terrorist. He doesn't have a care in the world. But everyone else is a terrorist. Number 2 is one of the Columbine kids, yes.
So number 4 is not a terrorist.
Oh, yeah.
Number 4 is, everyone in this chart is a terrorist.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Except for number 5. I said, who is not a terrorist? Many times, number 5 is not a terrorist. Okay? So, but that gives you a sense of misconceptions that people have about others. And we work at the U.S. Attorney's Office, it's part of our outreach, try to educate people and to try to overcome these misconceptions that many times lead to discrimination and to certain types of activity that, you know, innocent people have to deal with merely by virtue of what their ethnicity is, what they look like, and I don't need to tell you more about that because I'm sure some of you have dealt with that misperception. In our civil rights enforcement, we prosecuted a case dealing with hate crime, the destruction of a church, Macedonia Church of God in Christ, was burned to a crisp on the eve of President Obama's election. 3 young white men were very, very angry that this country had elected an African American to be its president. And so as a result, they burnt the church down. It was a kind of complicated investigation, but the officers, determined one person was guilty, and they cooperated and gave us evidence against others. And bottom line, all 3 of them were convicted. 2 pled guilty, 1 went to trial, was convicted, and they're doing significant federal sentences. We do human trafficking cases as part of our civil rights enforcement. This case I highlight here because these 2 individuals, one of them being Daryl Tavares and another co-conspirator, were prosecuted. They're serving 25 years for, basically they were violent, horrific pimps of these young girls that they tortured, that they intimidated, that they violated, just to keep them in the business to make money off their sexual, sales. And so we took that case, and both of them were convicted and sentenced to 25 years. We deal a lot with violent crime. We work with many communities on gang violence, and we prosecute other forms of violent crimes. We do gang sweeps and gun arrests. We try to target certain communities where there's a tremendous amount of violence, and we work with the local police departments. So we do that. Murder for hire, this was a case that recently we just prosecuted. This man is serving almost 30 years for shooting at a woman. Shot at her 5 times, hit her twice, she almost died. Her ex-boyfriend hired him to kill her. And then this is a case that you may be seeing more recently in the media, the Whitey Bulger case. He is alleged to have run a huge criminal enterprise, be engaged in 19 murders, and he was a fugitive for 16 years with his girlfriend. She was recently prosecuted and sentenced to 8 years for helping him hide for those 16 years, and he is scheduled for trial in March. The reason everybody goes crazy about this case primarily is because Mr. Bulger is alleged to have been, while he was committing all these crimes, he's alleged to have been an FBI informant. And so while he was working with the FBI and cooperating with them, he was out allegedly committing these crimes. And that's what, and we have prosecuted a number of agents and law enforcement officers from the state police. John Connolly is the most notorious of them all, who we prosecuted here, served 10 years for obstruction of justice, and is now doing 40 years in a Florida state prison for a murder that he was involved in, that he tipped Mr. Bulger off to, and the individual was murdered on that, and Connolly is now in jail. He's being former FBI agent. We do financial fraud cases. These are different kinds of cases that we do. I, before becoming the U.S. Attorney, was in my office for 12.5 years, and I worked in the economic crimes unit, where I did mortgage fraud cases, did embezzlement cases. This one was mine. This was a guy, Jeffrey Wendell, who was a treasurer at a company and stole $16 million. I think he stole $14 million. We used to buy yachts, a $1.9 million home on the Cape, a couple of homes in Florida, but that wasn't enough. He volunteered at his church to become the treasurer, and he stole close to $500,000 from his church. So this is another huge case that we prosecuted through our cyber crimes unit. This is referred to as the TJ Maxx case. This is Albert Gonzalez, drove around with co-conspirators, stealing information, credit card numbers from the software of retail establishments. Those are the different retail establishments that you can see here. TJ Maxx is one of the largest one. Millions and millions of dollars of damage, used the credit card numbers to generate other credit cards that they sold here in Eastern Europe. He's doing 20 years in prison for his role in that. And healthcare fraud is one area that we do a tremendous amount of work in. And billions of dollars that we've recovered for companies who sell medications for uses that they have not been approved by the Food and Drug Administration. Any questions? Yes.
I was wondering, who decides how many years people do or death penalties, or saying, oh, 8 years is enough as opposed to life?
Well, we make a recommendation that's based on the sentencing guidelines and other factors by statute, and the defense makes a recommendation, and then the judge makes a decision as to what sentence to impose. Sometimes the defense attorney and the prosecutor agree on a sentence, and the judge accepts it, but it's the judge's decision to make that sentence, to impose the number of years. Any other questions so far? Yes.
What happens after they finish their sentence or their term when they are released from prison? Because I know recidivism is a really big problem. So, what I guess here, specifically in Massachusetts, are there programs for rehabilitation, or what happens after they get out?
They're on supervised release most of the time after they finish a term of imprisonment, and during that supervised release, they work with probation. And when they work with probation, probation tries to help them to get a job, to get education if they haven't been educated. There are special programs, re-entry programs now that we work on, really to prevent recidivism, where they start working while they're in jail and getting ready to come out. They start working with programmers to help them find jobs, to be educated, to remain sober if they have substance abuse problems, and so forth. Yes?
You mentioned about the stereotype about terrorism, but my question is, over the years, have you seen an increase? Because usually there's a stereotype also about criminals, it's only men and white males on average, but have you seen an increase of women being part of more criminal activity?
There's a significant number of women, but it's still a smaller percentage of the cases that we prosecute. We don't see that many women in cases that we prosecute.
Was there ever a case that you had to go through the entire process? If that stuck for you most, is there that one case that you remember? Obviously 9/11 is one of them, but I mean a case that may not be 9/11.
I actually have a couple. I'll mention one though, because it always comes to my mind whenever I get asked that question. It was a case that I actually handled as a state prosecutor, and
It was a child abuse case. And I did a lot of child abuse and sexual assault cases. And this case involved two little girls, two sisters, in a neighborhood that had been sexually abused by the neighbor. And even though we brought charges, and it was an elderly man, it was an older man, and when we brought the charges, because they were just allegations at that point and he had no prior record, the judge he was not held on bail. So he was still walking up and down the street in the neighborhood. The family felt so terrified, emotionally traumatized, and it took a long time for the criminal case to work itself out. And he didn't plead guilty. He denied the allegations. So we had to go to trial, and I had to prepare them to testify in court. And so that case stays with me because I could see how traumatized they were, how difficult it was on the family, how tough it was to prepare them for trial, and how difficult when they were testifying on the stand. As hard as it was, you know, they still did very well, but it was difficult to go through that process. And in fact, one of the little girls, I remember, she kind of froze on me because I said to her, "What did he do next?" And you know, she said, "He touched me." And I said, "Well, where did he touch you?" And she was just froze on me. And then I said, "Well, can you show the jury where he touched you?" You know, just came to me, and she like put her hands over her eyes and she started to point to different parts of her body. And you know, I still get goosebumps telling that story. But the key about that case was when the jury came back and announced guilty on all counts, the judge then said, "Custody, Mr. Court Officer," and he was taken away in handcuffs. And the family just broke down crying and thanked me, and I felt a tremendous degree of satisfaction at the work, you know, that I was doing. Enough with the legal stuff, and I'll stick around afterwards to have questions about the U.S. Attorney's Office or cases that I handle. But in this position, I oversee this tremendous office that does tremendous work. And I get involved in decisions in terms of charging cases, overseeing them. I get involved in supervising lawyers and making different decisions. I engage with the community, law enforcement agencies. You know, I have to be a leader. You know, how did I get here? What has best prepared me for this job? You know, I am the oldest daughter, the oldest of 5 children. My parents are from Puerto Rico. They moved to New York City. They did not have much education. They did not have any English skills. When when I was born, we spoke Spanish at home. When I remember going to kindergarten, I didn't even know my name was Carmen because they would call me Coquita. So I didn't know I was Coquita. So the teacher was Carmen Ortiz. Carmen Ortiz, you know, by process of elimination, she figured out I was Carmen Ortiz. But anyway, I did well in school. Somehow I learned English. I did very well in school, and I worked hard. And I went to, from New York City, I grew up in Spanish Harlem in a housing project. And the bottom line is my parents always focused my attention on education. I was fortunate. I had very hardworking parents. They were not educated. They didn't, you know, weren't professionals, but they loved me. They provided support, and they encouraged me to work hard. And my mother especially, because I think my mother wanted for me what she didn't have. She didn't have a career. She didn't have the education that she so wanted, so she wanted me to be so much more. And I was inspired by that and motivated by it. I worked hard in high school to get into college. I worked hard in college to get into law school. And in law school, and I had scholarships along the way. I took advantage of different opportunities that presented themselves to me to try to pay for school and to make it through. I had that guidance counselor in high school who helped me figure out that Delphi would be the best place. It was close to home. I thought I would have to live at home. It got me a scholarship. And then I had that professor in college that gave me guidance and saw that I had a lot of potential and that I could take advantage of opportunities and I could be someone important, someone special. And so it was that belief, that encouragement, you know, the mentoring that helped me. I didn't have now a lot of mentors. It wasn't like there were a lot of women or Latina women that were lawyers that I aspired after, but you know, I just figured it out for myself that I knew I wanted more for me. I wanted to be educated. I wanted to have a profession. I wanted to have it all. I wanted to be a woman that would have a career, would have a husband, would have kids, and definitely have her strong set of girlfriends. So, and And unfortunately, you know, that's how I lived my life. So I wanted all those things, and that was important to me. From law school, I worked really hard. I took advantage of clinical programs. If any of you go on to graduate school or law school, you know, take advantage of work type of programs in terms of they give you experience. Not just the academic part of it, but any kind of clerkships, internship, volunteer opportunities, courses that get you to do the work, that enter the work and give you practical experience, I think helped me to get into the Department of Justice Honors Program. And so that was my first job out of law school. I worked at the Department of Justice for a couple of years as a trial attorney, and then I moved to Massachusetts for personal reasons. And then I was here in Massachusetts. I've been here since 1983. I've been a state prosecutor in the district attorney's office. I've done private practice work in a small firm. I've done civil litigation. I've also had a chance to be a defense attorney. And I have to tell you, the time in my life when I defended a number of cases, I had a couple of cases that were not guilty verdicts. I represented what I believed were really great people that had gotten into trouble, or there were two that I believed that were completely wrongfully accused. And so I felt a great sense of satisfaction, and it was rewarding to me to help people who had gotten into trouble, not just them, but their families as well. I also had the opportunity, because I'm fluent in Spanish, after I worked at the DA's office for a period of time, to work here at Harvard, but at Harvard Law School. A professor there had gotten monies for a special program that was to work with the judiciary of Guatemala. And so for 3 years, I worked closely with judges of Guatemala, and we also incorporated prosecutors, defense attorneys, law enforcement officials, and other legal officials, and it turned out to be an incredibly amazing experience for 3 years, traveling back and forth, teaching the judges here and others from Guatemala about our criminal justice system, what perhaps they could do in Guatemala to enhance their criminal penal system. And so it was a very rewarding experience. And I have to say that it was because I was fluent in Spanish that I was able to have that opportunity. In 1997, I joined the U.S. Attorney's Office. And so at the U.S. Attorney's Office, I worked in the economic crimes unit. And I did financial crime cases. And it was incredibly rewarding to me in terms of being able to handle real challenging, complex cases. Sometimes, I feel this is a stereotype, people think that Latinos are not smart enough, that we don't like anything too challenging, we don't work that hard. And so it was a challenge to me, and I thought I would only be in the office for 5 years. 12 years later, I started to think, you know, I need to leave. I've been here for 12 and a half years. It's time for me to do something different. I certainly wasn't getting any younger. A different kind of clock starts ticking. And so I decided that, you know, what should I do? And then this opportunity came up. And I thought that I would go for it. And I applied for it, knowing that if I didn't get it, at least going through the process might help me figure out what else I could do, what I would do in my life. But fortunately, I don't have to try to figure that out right now. That's for maybe for another time. It will be, because I don't get to do this job forever. I serve at the pleasure of the president. So if President Obama gets reelected in November, I may have the opportunity to serve for another 4 years. It's a 4-year term. And if he doesn't get reelected, then I'll be making that decision a lot sooner than I like, but because this is such a wonderful job. So that's sort of like my career path, getting here, and you know, what helped me to get to this position. And what I wanted to talk about next is these 10 principles that I feel have helped me to overcome challenges in my life, to live my life in a way that has been very fulfilling. And so I just want to go through them with you, because I think, you know, it's the kind of principles that I think you're going to see a bunch of them and think, oh my goodness, this is such common sense. This is so obvious. But sometimes we miss what's obvious. So I start off with dare to dream. You know, dare to want it all. Don't limit yourself. and don't let others limit you. Overcome stereotypes. I know that when in my generation, and maybe from your question, Beatrice, I got a little bit of this, although I think times have changed a bit. I'd like to think that they have. I was made to feel, being a woman, you have to make a decision. You're going to be, a wife and mother, or you're going to have a career. And if you want a challenging and demanding career, how can you be a mother? And if you're going to be a mother, how can you have a challenging and demanding career? And I sort of said, I'm doing it all. I want it all. And I think that that's one of the reasons I've accomplished it, because I wanted it. And so I think that you need to start there with whatever goals you have in mind. And how do you get that accomplished? You surround yourself with people who believe in you. When I was in college and people asked me, what are you doing after graduation? And I said, I'm going to law school. And there were a few that said, law school? Why are you doing that? That's going to be so hard. Why more school? 4 more years? What are you doing? You're always going to find people that will discourage you, or that might put you down. You need to surround yourself with people who are going to believe in you, encourage you, who are going to motivate you, and help you to accomplish your dreams, your ambitions, your goals. Confidence. I think it's really important to strive to have confidence and to feel that you can accomplish what you set out to do. Now, this varies in life. And some of you, you're old enough to know this. Sometimes I'm sure you feel like you're sitting on top of the world and you can accomplish whatever you set out to do. And then there are other times when you don't. I think for the most part, I have been a pretty confident person. But just as, I just told you a moment ago, I decided to go for this job. But for a while there, I thought I wouldn't go for the U.S. Attorney job. Why? My confidence wavered. And it does in this business. But you need to learn to, I lean on my family, my friends, my colleagues, and people I spoke to. And I remember one in particular said to me, you know what? What do you have to lose by going for it? And you already think you're not going to get the job anyway, so what do you care? Go through the process. Go through the process. And, it helped my confidence. It helped rebuild it. And here I am. And I wouldn't have had this opportunity if I didn't go for it. So you have to have confidence in yourself. Priorities. I think it's important that you understand that there are different priorities in life at different times of your life. I've always believed that family comes first. And there are decisions that I've made in my life where I have put my career on the back burner for my family. However, there have been times when I've had to disappoint my children because I've had to work late. I had to be in court. I had to go to that meeting that was critical, and I couldn't be, at a particular school event or sporting event or home in time for dinner, a big dinner even. And they were very disappointed. And I remember one of my youngest daughter, when she was little, she says, Mom, when I grow up and I get married and I have children, I'm not going to work. I'm going to be home for them. I was very frustrated. I said, well, I'm taking you out of that private school, and why are you going to school then? You're just going to stay home only 5 I was very frustrated. But you know what? I wasn't always like that at work. They were my priority. So there were evenings when I spent hours and hours rocking them, reading stories, talking, telling stories of Puerto Rico and my parents when I was little. And so they knew how important they were. And so now I have 2 20-year-olds, 20-somethings, that are very, very proud of their mother. And I think that as long as you explain things, you prioritize, and you explain why you're prioritizing, and you understand that certain things take place first, that's important, that you can accomplish. Don't give up. Don't give up in what you want to achieve in life, regardless of life setbacks and hardships. In 1992, in the summer of 1992, I was at the Middlesex DA's office. I had just had my second daughter. She wasn't a year old yet. And I was on top of the world. I was at the DA's office. I lived in a beautiful home. I had 2 little girls. My husband was a successful lawyer. I had arrived. I would look on my backyard and I would think, wow, not bad for a Puerto Rican girl from Spanish Harlem. I arrived. I was successful. And then I was sitting in my office and I got a call from a doctor telling me that they had discovered a mass in my husband. That's why all of a sudden lately he had been tired. And it turned out he had pancreatic cancer. In the span of a few weeks, my life turned upside down. And everything that I thought I had, all the security, the images of the two of us being in rocking chairs when we were 90, disappeared. So for the next 8 years, we battled cancer and we lived life to the fullest. But 12 years ago, he died, Michael died. And I was so traumatized by that experience. I did not want to walk into another courtroom. I didn't feel like getting out of bed, but you know what? I had 2 daughters, and I had to set an example for them. But overcoming that setback, which I felt was a setback, overcoming that hardship, which it was tough. But my family, my friends, my work colleagues really helped to get me back on track. And so I did get back on track. I did try cases again, and here I am. So, yeah. You are going to face different challenges. I see it through my friends and other family members. It could be a health issue. It could be a financial hardship. It could be a massive broken heart for a variety of different reasons, just tough times that befall you or someone that you love. Don't give up, really, because life just has, it's a long, long path. Help. What helps you to survive in life? What helps you to overcome those hardships? Asking for help. And I learned this the hard way. Because, especially I think it's because I'm the oldest of 5, I always felt I could do it all. And I don't like to ask for help. But the reality is that if you don't ask for help, you're going to drown. And you can't do it all, okay? You can't do it all if you don't ask for help. And I see asking for help as a sign of strength and not of weakness. Work hard. This is what's going to define you. Working hard. That's how you are going to be measured. By the impact you make, the impression you make in a class, in a school, in a job, in a particular position. Work hard. Make an impression. When you leave a particular position or job, you want people to think, wow, what a great worker. They worked hard. They were a real team player. You want them missing you, waiting for you to come back, hoping that maybe someday you will come back. You don't want them celebrating and applauding and thank God they're gone. You don't want that. That's not the impression you want to make. Because when you work hard and you make an impression, the individuals you work with or you work for, they can be references for future opportunities. They can be recommendations for that job you want or position that you want. And most importantly, they can turn into great friendships. Build relationships. You're going to meet people during this leadership course. Stay in touch with them. Maintain individuals that you meet in different network settings, different jobs, different experiences. I told you before, I worked for Eric Holder, the Attorney General, 30 years ago. I was a student, he was a young lawyer. I didn't know, had no idea that 30 years later, he'd be the U.S. Attorney and I'd be a U.S. Attorney working for him. It was great to see him yesterday. He was in town. I don't know if you saw it on the news. He spoke at my civil rights symposium, and it was great to see him again and to work under his leadership at the department. And so I think that it's important that you build relationships and nurture them and maintain them throughout the years. Accept disappointments with class and grace. There are times you're not going to get that job, you're not going to get the class, you're not going to get the position, you're not going to get that trip that everybody in the company is vying for, or conference. Accept those disappointments and don't let them make you bitter or cynical or generate an attitude. Learn from them and figure out how to do better next time so that you're able to achieve what you want. And at the end, I say just be nice. This is a very obvious one, but you know what? You all, I'm sure, encounter students or people that you've worked with before. Certainly in the future, I guarantee you, because I work with some people like this, who complain, who are negative. You know, when I work with people, especially my supervisors, and I say, you know, I want to get this done, and I start hearing, well, we can't because this, and I said, you know what? I don't want to hear why we can't do it, how we tried it 3 years ago and it didn't work. I want you to put your thinking cap on and tell me how we can do it. Let's brainstorm and figure out how we can accomplish something. You know, be positive. But at the end of the day, be nice, say hello, stop to ask people, how are you? Especially people who work for you as you become the future leaders, you know, in our lifetime. I think that, you know, you're here in this course. That's it. Any more questions? I want to end, because I want to now really listen to what's on your mind or have you ask questions, but I want to tell you that the fact that you are here means you are special. You've been selected. You're here for a reason. Take advantage of this opportunity. I'm really confident that, you know, by working hard, that you will be able to accomplish your goals. You'll be able to achieve your dreams. You will be leaders, whether it's in government or in business or in your communities. You will be leaders. But don't forget this, and this is very, very important, especially for this audience. When you do become the leader that you've worked so hard to become, don't forget where you came from. Do not forget to reach out to others in your community, especially our youth, our young people. And I know you're young, but there's a lot of others that are younger and really struggling. And you need to really be a role model and be an example for those little boys and girls who are dealing with their own hardships, with their own lack of support, with, you know, school challenges. You need to reach out and show them that they can do it because you've done it. So thank you. Questions?
Hi, my name is Vito Casado, University of Massachusetts, Boston. I'm one of Henry's friends, by the way.
Oh, okay, Henry.
My question to you is the following. For the people here that are interested in a possible career in law, or maybe as a lawyer, private practice, whatever, there's a lot of people, there's a big influx of people coming into law school. There's a lot of competition right now in today's environment. What would you say as words of encouragement for people when, let's say, what you really hear is more negative comments, like, you know, around your community, like, oh, there's too many people in law school, you'll never make it, or, you know, why are you going to go into law when you can go into business or do something else? What would you say as basically advice or words of encouragement for students here that want to apply to law school and want to pursue an education in law?
Sure. You know, law school is competitive, and it's hard. It's not easy, especially the first year. It is really tough. But just because it's tough and it's competitive doesn't mean that if you set your mind to, excuse me, if you set your mind to doing it, and to, you know, you apply yourself in law school, that you cannot succeed. So that would not dissuade you that, oh, I can't do it. If I get there, I'm going to flunk out. If you really want to accomplish it. I would ask more, why do I want to be a lawyer? What do I hope to accomplish by being a lawyer? And is this what I really, really want? And I say that because, not just because law school is hard and difficult, but also because it's expensive. So you know, you want to do a calculus, I think. I mean, I was fortunate. I got a scholarship. I aimed for a scholarship right out of college. I learned, I tried to find out who had programs, who had opportunities, and George Washington University had these scholarships. I applied for it. I wanted to be desperately in DC. And I had always wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to perform in court. I wanted to do challenging work. I wanted to help people. Those are my reasons. But it wasn't even as expensive then as it is now. So you've got to look at what kind of debt do you have? What's your, you know, what's your situation out of college, and what opportunities are there to get into law school and to finance law school? And why do you want to be a lawyer? And you can answer those questions. If you're not sure, and what do you hope to accomplish as a lawyer? To be in law school for the sake of, I think, well, I'll figure it out, maybe. I would try to, and you can change, because sometimes you think, oh, I want to be a prosecutor, and you decide, well, no, I'm going to be a defense lawyer. Or I really want to be in court, and then you take that class that puts you in court, and you freak out, and you get a stomach ache, and you're sick, and you're like, I don't want to be in court. So it doesn't mean you can't do corporate work in an office and negotiate with clients. So there are different parts of the law, but I would really figure out why you want it and are you passionate about it, and then it makes it worthwhile. And talk to people who are in the legal profession and see. I have to tell you, I have had a wonderful, wonderful career in the law. And so, you know, but I have a number of friends who are miserable in the law, but they're stuck. You know, they're making the big salary, they live in the big house, they kids in private school, and so it kind of gets away from you. And always reassess in life, you know, as you go through life, reassess if this is what you want to be doing, if this is what's making you happy. Because I agree, I think it was the prior speaker, Professor Saxton, was it? Yes, you know, I heard him say, you know, be passionate, be passionate. People are, you know, it's true, you want to be happy at what you're doing. And sometimes it changes in life, but I think that's the key motivator. Yes, sir. Nestor.
Yeah, I'm Nestor from Loyola Marymount University. First off, I just want to say thank you for sharing the story, because people always say never give up, but you know how that goes. So I just want to say thank you.
I know. You know, when I talk to young kids, I always say, don't listen to me because I'm just saying these things to say them. You know, it's because I've lived them. But.
So I want to ask, well, first of all, do the people that were in, do they go, the people that you spoke about, is it like federal prisons or state prisons?
The people that I spoke about, the people who get prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office, if they get a term of imprisonment, they serve their time in a federal prison, as opposed to state.
So I want to ask, what is the percentage of Latinos in federal prisons?
That's a good question, and I'm embarrassed to say that I don't know the answer. I do know that there's a significant number of minorities, especially African Americans, in the prisons. And I would not be surprised if there was a significant number, especially with respect to drug offenses, that are Latino. Yes. Yes, you in the green.
Oh, okay.
Michelle.
Yes. Hi, well, nice to meet you. Also, thank you for sharing your story. It's really inspirational, especially, like you said, as a Latina woman, to see you and to think that, you know, we can be as successful as you one day. So my question is, when a case comes to your office, what makes you decide if it's something that you want to pursue or not? Like, what evidence do you look for? Because I know myself, one of my biggest fears would probably be putting someone who's innocent behind bars, or not behind bars, or, you know, not having the other person be killed. So
Yeah.
what do you look for?
Well, you know, especially when I was a line prosecutor, and now even as U.S. attorney, when on very high significant cases that I get involved in, I say, okay, what's the evidence that we're going to move forward on, and that needs my approval. I look to see, you know, the quality of the evidence in terms of witnesses, physical evidence, documents. You know, at the federal level, we have tremendous resources. A lot of our cases that are brought are pursuant to sting operations or undercover operations. So there's a lot of evidence that's on a videotape or a tape recording. So you have a picture, a videotape of a politician taking a bribe. You have bank account records that show, you know, that Mr. Wendell took millions of dollars, deposited them, fool that he was, in a Cape Cod account, and then spent the money. So you trace the money. So you really look for the concrete evidence that proves your case. And so I think that's it. You know, and sometimes if you're relying, for example, on a cooperator, and all you have is somebody's word, and they have a lot of what we call baggage, you know, like a prior criminal record, or they themselves have gotten into trouble and trying to work out a deal and trying to minimize their criminal liability, and that's all you have, then that's going to make you more suspect, and you're not going to bring a case that way. And also, for us to bring a case in the federal court, it has to be of a certain degree of significance, because the district attorney's offices, they prosecute cases. They do all the state cases and you know, at a certain level. And we also have the Attorney General's office of the state that also prosecutes criminal cases as well. So we're all, you know, it depends on the nature of the crime and the kind of case that it is to determine whether or not we're going to spend our resources and it makes sense for the federal government to pursue it. Yes, yes.
My question is, have you ever had to defend anyone you knew was guilty of like a substantial crime? If so, how did you go about it?
I actually have not had to defend anyone of substantial crime that I thought was guilty. I did defend, I defended a young woman once that was charged with motor vehicle homicide. I thought she was not guilty, and she was found not guilty. They thought she was very negligent. There was some issue of alcohol involved, but they didn't have the evidence for the alcohol part of it, so they didn't charge her with that. And I just thought that it was an elderly gentleman who was all dressed in black, crossing a very dark road, and she hit him by accident and dragged him. So, I think that was one of the ones. I will say this, I've been primarily a prosecutor. The defense work that I did it for a couple of years. I didn't do it for an extensive period of time.
So I guess I have a follow-up on that. Then if you had to defend someone like you knew was guilty, how would you go about that?
I'd do the best job I could. Unless I felt that they were guilty of a crime that I had some ethical or moral issue with. I have to say that I would not have represented Jerry Sandowski. I couldn't have done that. That's an example. But sometimes people do commit very, very serious crimes. They're still entitled to a legal defense. And maybe to make the situation better, I can help them and their family in that process. Yes, sir. Yes, you in the brown. Can't see your sign, sir. Daniel, okay.
My name is Daniel Echeverry from Loyola Marymount University. First, I would also like to thank you for coming and sharing your very inspirational story with us. My question for you is, in the past, our society has seen many cases in which men of color, more specifically in the Latino and African American community, have been prosecuted in a much more aggressive and harsh manner than their white counterparts. Why do you think this happens in today's system of justice?
Well, I'm not sure how to answer that question. I mean, I do think that there have been certain crimes that have affected the minority community more severely, and we have tried to balance them. For example, several years ago, under the sentencing guidelines, if you were caught with crack cocaine, which in a lot of inner city communities people use because it's cheaper than white powder cocaine, the way that those cases were handled, and they were treated more harshly because crack was deemed to be a much more serious drug. So if you were in possession of crack instead of cocaine, then you got a higher sentence. But as a result, it turned out, after studies were done, that it was more Black, African American primarily in those kinds of cases, that that as a result, then more minorities and more African Americans were spending a greater amount of time in jail. So as a result, we amended the sentencing guidelines so that it was lowered, so that now you don't have such harsh penalties. They're still harsh because if you get prosecuted by the federal government, it is harsh penalties. They're more, by nature, they're more serious crimes. We focus on individuals that do have records or have committed a very serious crime. So the punishments are serious, are more severe in that sense.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I know that the crack cocaine was primarily found in Latino and African American neighborhoods. And obviously cocaine is a much more expensive drug and was found more in Caucasian neighborhoods. But would you say that that doesn't tie into racism and racial profiling within those communities?
No, I think that there is a degree of racism engaged in some of this process. I wouldn't deny that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes.
My question is, oh, sorry,
Yes, Josie.
okay, sure. Okay, my name is Josie Caesar. I'm from the University of Houston. And my question is similar to Daniel's. I don't know if you heard about Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow. Are you familiar with that?
You know, I think I've heard, I think yesterday, wasn't there a speaker that mentioned, I was at an event and someone mentioned it, but I'm not familiar with the book and I haven't read it.
Okay, well, so basically she presents an argument that
the Department of Justice historically has kind of facilitated and tolerated this new Jim Crow order through the over-incarceration of minorities, and especially Latinos and African Americans, and particularly males. So my question to you is like,
And particularly what?
Males.
Males,
Yeah.
okay.
And so my question to you is like, what's your reaction to that? Because they are disenfranchised, and because of racial profiling, they're more likely to become like to get in jail or prison. And then once they're out of it, they don't have the right to vote. They have hard problems getting jobs, or hard time getting jobs. And so it's almost like that is that segregation with that community. So like, what's your reaction to that? And like, how do you think it could be improved?
Well, I think it can be improved by first, the department, and I know that the department is doing this because I'm a member of the Attorney General's Advisory Committee, and we chair different subcommittees. I actually do more of the white collar because that's where a lot of my experience is. But my colleague oversees the Criminal Practice Committee, and they're looking at sentencings and the history in sentencings to see what we can do. And that's how that came up in terms of the crack cocaine and filing amendments to do that, as well as, I can't speak to other administrations, but I will speak to this administration. I think that the department has made a real effort to put more emphasis on prevention and intervention of crimes, and also not believing that all you did, and I think this might have been the philosophy at other times, that we as prosecutors or in the government, all you have to do is lock someone away and throw away the key. You can't solve this problem of violent offenses and crimes in the neighborhoods through just mere incarceration. And that's why this department has spent a tremendous amount of resources. I know a number of my colleagues at different U.S. attorneys' offices has working with probation, working with the court system on reentry and care programs to look at rehabilitation process, to identify individuals when they're in prison, to work with them closely so that they can re-enter society, so they can have an education, they can be employed, and so forth. So I think we need to be sensitive to that. I think we need to identify where the problems exist and take steps to address them. And I think that we're trying to do that. Yes?
Hi, thank you, I want to say. My name is Nico Montano, I'm from Johnson College of Criminal Justice. My question is that, as an aspiring academic, usually we find ourselves at odds with certain departments in the government, not because there isn't collaboration, but sometimes because we feel that there's not as much space for dialogue between the department and many researchers and academic institutions, which I think sometimes produce such conclusions and kind of attack the department, and sometimes unfairly. So how would you say that would be a good way for many people in the academic world, and I'm not saying that they don't work together now, but to like further continue this, kind of collaborative work and collaborative spirit to kind of get to better ways, for example, like violence reduction?
Well, I think academics and researchers really need to make more of an effort to understand things from the government's perspective and what we're trying to achieve. For example, there was a panel once and a judge in our court felt that we as the federal government were bringing too many gun cases and that gun cases belonged in state court. Why are we locking up individuals for 5 or 10 years that were in possession of a gun, and that these were victimless crimes? Victimless crimes. I don't see them as victimless crimes. When I meet with people who lost their 13-year-old son because he was shooting hoops in a neighborhood in Dorchester and just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and 2 gang members decided to shoot it out or target a drive-by and killed him, and now they've lost. To me, that's not a victimless crime, because a lot of times, even though you have many prosecutions of individuals in inner cities, which from the one hand, some people think, well, we're targeting these individuals, and there could be some degree of racial profiling in that sense. The reality also is that the communities that are suffering are communities of color. It's the Latino family or the black family that's afraid to send their kid walking to school or send them to the grocery store to get a gallon of milk because they could encounter violence, and the next thing you know, you get a call that your child is dead. And so I think more has to be understood of what's on the other side of it as well. And I think that's important because there has to be a practical application to it. That's my little tidbit there. Yes.
Your words, I'm the Latina that wants to have it all, definitely resonated with me, as well as all of like the 20-something Latinas entering like the workforce and ending or beginning our lives, ending or finishing our undergrad. How did you begin that balance that you have of having it all from your 20s and beyond to where you are now?
I think that you need to, remember when I said surround yourself with people who support you? I think you learn to pick who you're going to be with, really, and people are going to support that. For example, I always say this, you can't pick the family that you're born into, for better or for worse. It is what it is. When I was growing up, my father, I lived with a very strict father. No surprise. And, to me, it was a typical Puerto Rican dad, very strict. I was the daughter. The rules were very different from my brothers, though. I wasn't allowed to go out with boys. I wasn't allowed to go on dates. And he told me once, the only man I want to meet is the man you're going to marry. I said, well, how am I going to find somebody to marry if I can't go out with anybody? It's kind of tough, right? So, I knew that I wanted it all. So when I socialized with people that embraced that and supported it. My first husband, who passed away 12 years ago, was incredibly supportive of my career. So if you're going to partner up with someone, I think that you want someone that's going to support your goals. I had friends whose husbands wanted them to stay home. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It wouldn't have worked for me, but wanted them to stay at home, wanted them to raise the children, did not want any other kind of a lifestyle. And so if you have very different ambitions and goals for yourself, for me that would be very serious. I think that you need to pick and choose who's going to be supportive of you. When I had young kids, my husband understood, if I have to be in court, if I have to do certain things, if I have to travel on business, it's your responsibility to come home early. It's your responsibility perhaps to cook the dinner. Now, he was very successful, so he did the next best thing. He hired somebody to do that stuff. Sometimes you can't always do that. I remarried last summer, and the individual that I'm married to now, so I have a happy ending on that part-time. But we've been together 10 years. I met him 2 years after my husband passed away. When I was thinking about going for this position, and it was going to be, he knew if I got it, it was going to be very time-consuming, very demanding. I wasn't going to be around a lot. There was all this. It was going to change my life in some ways, in many ways. But he supported me. He encouraged me. And when my confidence wavered, he said, "You're the most talented. You have all this great experience. You have a tremendous personal story. You've got what it takes." I mean, he pushed me forward. So, and I'm not just saying it in partnership. My girlfriends did the same thing. When my husband died, it was my girlfriends who really supported and helped me tremendously, along with my family. So I think you surround yourself with people who help you to balance it. And I think that's what you need to get going, and you ask for help. Yes?
I think I haven't raised my hand until now because I didn't have something that I felt was like, the right question. And now that you've said that, I think what I want to know is in the interim, before you find the right selected family, at times you don't have people, you have people that discourage you, and at times that's all that's around you. I'm thinking of high school for myself especially, and at that time I feel like it's extremely difficult, and now hearing what you've come to, all I hear is, even with the questions that are sort of coming your way, a tremendous responsibility and yet a tremendous pressure. And so when you don't have that support system, you do feel alone. And how do you do it then? Like, how do you do it when you don't know who to ask and when you have to rely on yourself?
In many ways, you have to search for that drive in you. Because at the end of the day, it's your responsibility, your job to accomplish some things to get there. I think that when you're feeling alone, if you don't have that support mechanism, I tell kids this all the time, especially kids who I know are really challenged at home and don't have mom or dad there, or have mom and dad who is very discouraging. I have kids who tell me when they're graduating high school, their parents don't want them to go to college. They want them to get a job and help the family. And if you've graduated from from college, they certainly don't want you to go on. They want you to work and help the family. And so there's a lot of pressure not to sort of move forward and continue that. I think you need to reach out beyond that small world. Reach out to professors, teachers. I tell them to reach out to neighbors, reach out to a relative, reach out to people in your church if you go to church or you're a part of organized religion. Try to find that support elsewhere. And there are a lot of people, not just only individuals, but organizations in your neighborhood, in your community, that want to help you. A lot of times, I deal with a number of organizations that want to help kids, that want to inspire. I just gave a talk at this graduation this weekend called, it was a graduation from the Chica program. And this is an organization that was set up to mentor, empower, and encourage young Latino girls. And there were 6 graduates. It's the first year. It's in its infancy still, so it's their first year. And so here's this organization trying to help girls, and some girls had dropped out, some girls had stayed in, and so they're trying to provide some support. So I think that you need to sort of be a little bit of a visionary and really reach out and not be afraid to ask help. And when you see young people in similar circumstances, I think you need to give them that guidance and give them that advice. And if you see someone who's really limited, try to encourage them, play that role in their life, or try to find others that are willing to play that role.
I appreciate what you're saying, and I have one more brief question. I know a lot of people want to ask things, but as a Latino male, or even a minority in some cases, but being a male sometimes, how do you counter, or what are your thoughts about possibly not being seen as though you need that help? Sort of when you enter a room, you're seen as like you're supposed to be a certain way, you're supposed to have a certain, especially in our culture a lot of the times, as a Latino male, you're supposed to be something. Or supposed to be strong and not ask for help, when I don't agree that that's right, but I still think it's what people see when they look.
I think people do see that, but in many ways that's another stereotype that you need to fight against and that you need to overcome. And by doing that, you educate them as well. Daria, am I running late? Is this okay?
Take one or two more questions.
Oh, okay. No, you can tell me when to stop. Go ahead. Yes, you.
Yes. Well, thank you for your presentation. It was really inspiring. With wanting to make me, well, I was wanting to cry, but it was kind of that point where you talked about the 2 sisters, and I had an experience where I was in 4th grade and I was going to psychologist just for like a few weeks because I was having nightmares about random Casper. I was scared of Casper, the friendly ghost. So my mom thought that was really weird, and she took me to a psychologist. And when I was there, I know that's funny.
Yeah.
I was playing with this, they had like toys there in the office, and it was the one where you had the things you move around the room. It was another little girl, and I remember that we started talking like, "Oh, why are you here?" And she asked me, and I told her, and she thought it was funny, whatever. And then I asked her, but her answer wasn't funny. She had told me that her dad made her do things to him, and that he would, touch her and stuff. And I remember I shared that with my group as I got closer to him because I got more comfortable, because it was something that it made me very uncomfortable, and made me feel sick but like angry. So I'm sorry. That's when I decided I knew that there was nothing wrong with that, and I didn't accept it. So as I got older, I decided I wanted to go to law school, so I wouldn't have to, I guess, put up with that. And I know that I've never gotten over it. I haven't gotten over it. I was in 4th grade, and still always. So when you said that, just made me feel even more like that's what I want to do, and I want to go to law school and fight against abuse of children. So, 1, thank you for that very, very inspiring presentation. And 2, what experience was it that you went through that made you want to become a lawyer before that happened, before that trial?
Well, it was just a number of different factors, I felt. I wanted to be in a profession that I thought I could be successful and good at, and I also thought that it would be a profession where I could help people. I eventually wanted to be a prosecutor because I felt as a prosecutor I could help victims of crimes navigate through the criminal justice system and try to make them whole and address something that terrible that happened to them. But I also thought that I would be in a position to make sure that defendants' rights were observed, that the evidence I had was properly obtained, and that there wouldn't be abuse in that process, that innocent people wouldn't be charged because I cared more about winning rather than doing the right thing. And so it was those kinds of thoughts that led me to that. And I think it was more the practice of the law and the fact that I thought I could be successful at it and have a much better life than my parents had that drew me to it. It wasn't something, certainly not as incredible as what is drawing you. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I want to, from UTPA, in the future, I want to put my social science background to use in the White House, and along the way, I want to break the stereotype of piercings and tattoos. So my question is, have you ever experienced stereotypes or felt you were denied a job because you're a woman?
I never felt that I was denied a job because I was a woman or a Latina. I will say this about being a Latino, especially as more and more, government, corporate America, private industry, healthcare facilities want to diversify. In many ways, it can be a huge plus for you. You work hard, you have good grades, you graduate from a school, you have a certain presentation, you're ambitious. I think in many ways that works for you. I thought, and I think you need to use it as an asset rather than a negative in terms of being a woman or being Hispanic. And I think that it's important not to lose sight of that and to use it in a positive way rather than viewing it as a negative way. I hate to say the tattoo thing might be a problem, but that could be it. Questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Kanika. I'm from the City University of New York at the College of Staten Island. And my question relates back to, I think, what Sarah asked before about saying that you can have it all. Recently there was an op-ed written by Anne-Marie
Just talk a little bit louder, huh?
Sorry.
That's all right.
There was an op-ed written by Anne-Marie Slaughter saying that women can't have it all, and it's caused a lot of debate. And one thing that she mentioned was that how society, how women are perceived in society, and I mean, it seems like that you disagree with that viewpoint that.
Yeah, why does she say we can't have it all?
She says that, I think she says like she struggles with the balance between her family and her job and being a professional and a mother. And one thing she tries to address is the fact that she doesn't think that society is supporting women in that way, so that a lot more women can achieve all that they want to. So my question is, what do you think as a society we can do to promote that for women and make it so that not everyone believes that women cannot do it?
Well, I think that you have to start from the premise that, I disagree with that obviously because I feel I've had it all. Now, the fact that I say you can have it all, having it all isn't easy all the time. It really isn't easy because there are times when you have to struggle with that balance. You feel guilty because you do miss the school program or the ballet practice or the soccer game, or you feel that someone else is getting a particular case or moving up in the office, or they're able to be a supervisor or do greater things at work because they don't have to leave a little bit early to go deal with the kids at home. So there's certain sacrifices you make at both ends at different times. I think society can help, and I think society is helping in some ways because, for example, opposed to when I, started out in this business, I do think men, for example, are much more greater supporters in family now. I mean, I see a number of my colleagues men leaving early so they can go and, you know, pick up after school, or if they're late in the morning dropping in, or a child gets sick, they've got to go home, you know, they're doing this, they're doing that. And so I think there's more support from, you know, in partnerships to a great extent. And I also think that women need to support women. I see that in terms of the organizations that, you know, I find myself speaking in front of, in terms of inspiring one another, coming up and brainstorming with ideas as to how to balance it all. And I think that's the community that you have to surround yourself with. The bottom line is that it's never perfect at the end of the day. You know, I'm a career person, and there have been times when I have felt guilty, and I think, why am I shortchanging my family because I'm busy doing, you know, doing this trial or doing this assignment, and yet I've had friends, especially now that we're all in our 50s, who have dedicated their complete lives to family and home and feel tremendous regret, and especially if things start to fall apart at this point in your life for you. And so I think that's something else. It's never perfect. So you have to sort of search within yourself and figure out what is it that I really want, what's going to work best for me, and be true to yourself. I know that might sound a little corny, but don't live a life where you're going to regret the choices. There have been times when I have I've dropped out of every single organization. I have not gone for anything, any positions at work that could have advanced my career because my husband was sick, my children needed me, and I don't regret that at all. I don't regret it at all. But there were other times when I made other choices. And so, you know, life is just a balancing act, and it's a long road. So different things happen at different times.
Thank you.
I know I've talked too much.